Good evening to everyone present here tonight. My name is Brian and I will be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. As we'd like to continue improving your experience with us, please help us achieve this by completing the poll that will be published during this broadcast. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed is being shared on the JPO YouTube channel. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to type them out in the Q&A section down below. For those of you joining us from YouTube, please type your questions out in the YouTube live chat down below. A recording of the webinar will also be uploaded onto the YouTube channel. Tonight's seminar features Mr. Paul Andrew Philbert MBE, with his topic being Exploring the Musical World as a Timpanist. Paul was born in London, where he first started off as a singer. During this time, his musical abilities were first noticed, resulting in his preparatory school music teacher advising him to audition for the Purcell School, which is a specialist music school. Over the course of 7 years, he studied various instruments including piano, violin, clarinet, the trumpet, and trombone. At the age of 15, he ultimately took up the timpani and percussion, and has since then never looked back. He continued his studies at the Trinity College of Music in London, while also assuming the position as the president of the College Students' Union for a year. Having completed his postgraduate studies, he began working as a freelance musician in the UK and abroad. Over the years, he has performed with many professional orchestras, including the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, the Orchestra of the Royal Opera House Covent Garden, the BBC Symphony Orchestra, Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, the CBSO, and various others. Music has also allowed him to travel the globe, including the USA, various parts of Europe, and New Zealand, before he then accepted the position of founding section principal timpani with the then newly formed Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra, MPO, in Kuala Lumpur. During his time in Malaysia, and in addition to his duties as a performer, Paul maintained a close association with the Education and Outreach Department of the MPO, giving individual lessons, coaching the youth orchestra, and undertaking masterclasses and workshops. Alongside the orchestra, he has also toured Australia, other parts of Malaysia, and other parts of Asia, including Singapore, Japan, as well as Korea. He has also collaborated with the celebrated Malaysian ensembles Hands Percussion and Rhythm in Bronze on multiple occasions. Since his departure from the MPO in 2012, Paul has continued to perform and educate in both Asia and Europe, while also touring the USA and South Americas, with the Philharmonia Orchestra with Esa-Pekka Salonen and Vladimir Ashkenazy. In 2015, he became the founding principal timpanist of the Chineke Orchestra, which is the very first majority Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse ensemble to become established within Europe. He remains as its principal timpanist to this very day. He also took up the chair as principal timpanist with the Orchestra of Opera North UK, and most notably, performed Wagner's Mammoth Ring cycle 6 times in completion during the spring and summer of 2016. Having served with Opera North for almost 3 years, Paul moved to Glasgow and has become the new section principal timpanist and a player director with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. He is also a timpani tutor at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland and now sits on the Board of Governors for Systema Scotland, Direct Mediation Services, and Spectrum Culture Exchange. During 2020, Paul hosted a number of radio programs for Scala Radio, including a series of special daily features for the complete duration of Black History Month. Additionally, Paul was awarded the title of Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, or MBE for short, for his services to music in Her Majesty the Queen's Birthday Honours List that was published on 10th of October 2020. As our JPO family attendees are mostly students ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice here for all of us tonight is invaluable and greatly appreciated. The JPO is very honored to have Mr. Paul Andrew Philbert join in as our guest for tonight. I hope that you all join me in giving him a warm welcome. So without further ado, once again, a very good evening or very good afternoon to you, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us
Hello.
tonight. Hello.
It's my pleasure. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
The honor is ours because you're allowing us to interview you. So yeah, thanks for that. So to start tonight's interview, what can you tell us about the video that we had just watched?
Yes, well, that's a performance of Mahler's First Symphony, or highlights from it. I had a word with the video guy. His name's Jack, and asked for a selection of shots of me. Actually, this little compilation came about. I was doing a talk for a clinic for the Royal Northern College of Music early February of last year, and I just needed some video to put together for all of that, and he very kindly provided it for me. And then I asked for permission to upload it to YouTube, and so it's got the RSNO logo in the top left-hand corner, and that is the end result, that which you have seen there, also available to watch. It was a good performance, lovely performance, and nice to be able to collaborate with Kiyomi again since our days in Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. So, so our first question for tonight. So why did you choose the timpani and percussion in general? Because you had, as mentioned in your profile earlier, you actually had the opportunity to pick up various instruments ranging from all the different instrument families. So what influenced you to becoming a full-fledged percussionist, or in your case, a timpanist?
I think all of the other instruments, I was finding my way, and singing for me was natural. I did it all the time from the time I was very young, and that's, I suppose, what opened the door to the Purcell School for me. But once I was there, finding my own speciality instrument took me a very long time. From the very beginning of school life, my colleagues, my fellow pupils were all very talented, very focused. Many of them had already arrived at the instrument which they are still playing now. And it took me a further 6 years of time at Purcell before I started playing timpani and percussion. I love playing the clarinet. I enjoyed playing the violin, I'll put it that way. The sound is so sonorous and wonderful, and it's a very expressive instrument. But each time I come up against roadblocks, my relationship with the piano was not perhaps so solid nor complete, and my moments with brass instruments were honestly quite fleeting. Again, it was just a process of trying to see if anything would fit for me. But when I had my first percussion lesson, I knew straight away. It was so different. And probably for the first time in her life, my mum did not have to nag me to practice. I was there. I wanted to do it. So yeah. And my first timpani lesson stood apart from my first percussion experience, in the sense that it was transformative. It was like I had a proclamation from on high. This is what you're meant to do. It really felt so visceral and complete from the very first moment I played timpani. So yes, that's my answer.
Well, it definitely sounds like that you found your calling there. So, have you ever tried picking up the instruments that you learned before? Ever since you picked up timpani, because you did say that you never looked back, but did you ever try picking it up just to play for fun or something like that?
I think, in fact, I'm sure. My mum's just recently moved to Scotland, and I know that the clarinet has moved up with her, so that's there somewhere. I think I got it out of the case a couple of times, but I mean, you know, I have no embouchure left, nothing at all. Violin, I can pluck a reasonably accurate G major scale over what, 2 octaves, all in first position. That's not an issue for me. I still remember where the fingers go. My bow arm has gone to, I mean, there's nothing there at all. No, I mean, with the amount that I have on my plate now, I don't really have time to indulge in all of that stuff. Even during COVID, as we are now, the RSNO have been very busy. But this new strain has put an extra spanner in the works, sadly. I'm supposed to start work, in fact, tomorrow morning, but that's been put back another couple of weeks while we review the health and safety procedures and get to know a little bit more about this new strain. So that's delayed things, but we're now due to start on the 8th of February. So.
All right. Well, it's good to hear that your orchestra is keeping all of you busy. But yeah, hopefully things do turn out for the better over there for you guys.
Well, for us all.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Moving on. So traveling the world, it has been shown that you had the opportunity to collaborate as well as become an official member for various prestigious orchestras. So would you mind elaborating on some of your most memorable experiences with said orchestras?
Let me see. I think there've been, in my journey post MPO to where I am now, my first, well, the thing that came out of the blue that really surprised me, and the most gorgeous ensemble to play with would be the Philharmonia, and to work with them and Esa-Pekka Salonen. The first time I was in with them, we toured Europe with Symphonie Fantastique and Mahler 9, and then went on to the States with Wozzeck, and Mahler 9 and various other things. I mean, they gobble up music. It was an enormous program. It was a Beethoven symphony or 2 in there, all sorts of stuff. But the 2 big stalwarts for the second half were Wozzeck and Mahler 9. And I will, to this day, I will never forget the performance we did in Walt Disney Hall in LA. When I'm on tour, my focus is very narrow. I don't really do much sightseeing. I don't really do much sightseeing because I'm concentrated on sleeping as much as possible and being in as good physical condition as possible in order to perform as well as possible. That's my kind of primary focus, and it tends to mean that I'm not particularly sociable or anything like that. But we got to LA. And I wasn't even thinking, oh yes, this is where Esa-Pekka Salonen used to. This was his orchestra before, and sat there ready for the concert. Extraordinary room. I mean, incredible. Anyone, if you ever get the chance to go and sit in that room and experience a concert, you must. It's incredible. Anyway, I was sat there ready to play Wozzeck, and then out he walks, and the crowd went berserk. They went crazy. It was like being in a pop concert. And what a way to start, with this rapturous welcome for this. I mean, he's a genius, wonderful man, lovely man as well, very personable, so gifted with his thoughts. But really, just every moment with that orchestra, they're on fire the whole time. It's very intense, but rewarding, like I think nothing else I've experienced musically ever anywhere. Always on, and lovely people besides. So I'd say that's my kind of one of many wonderful lasting memories with them. Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra. I again, on my route back to the UK, we stopped off in Seoul, and I learned that there was a vacancy going with them, So I started. So I prepared for my audition. I performed with them. No. I performed my audition, and they happened to be performing Mahler 9 at that time. And they very kindly offered me tickets to see the performance. And to this day, I'll never forget. They had the string size alone. I think it was 20, 18, 16, 14, 12 for the strings, which was just massive. I've never seen any other orchestra on the earth do that in that way. And so the sound from the string section was just, you'd have to be in there to experience it. But the last movement was so potent and intense and powerful. And I was bowled over by that show. And I turned to my wife and I said, I have to play with this orchestra. And I was fortunate enough that, just a few months later, they invited me to play. And I ended up spending 6 months working with them and have been a very regular guest performer with them ever since then. Yeah, a lovely group of people. And yeah, well, I love being in Korea. The only thing I'd change is make vegetarian food more easily accessible. But yeah, wonderful country, lovely orchestra. And last but not least, the RSNO. Yeah, I'll never forget that sat in the very first day of my trial. I played 3 hours with them, and I went back to get some dinner before the evening rehearsals. And I turned to my wife and I said, it's strange. I feel like I'm at home. Just the syntax, how they play, where they play, just everything, just from day one, it felt so natural. And that's really struck me. And the fact that almost every day, without fail, something that someone in that orchestra will do will just melt my heart because it's so beautiful. And yeah, I've been so lucky to work with this group. They are lovely people and fantastic musicians. So yes.
Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. It definitely sounds like you had a very wholesome long journey throughout your years as a timpanist. So yeah, once again, many thanks for sharing all that with us.
Pleasure.
So having experienced all this, how would you describe that this diverse global experience has affected your development as a musician? To add to this, what have been the most significant challenges of undergoing such experiences?
I think the more groups you perform with, it broadens your palette, it broadens your sensitivity, it broadens your depth of understanding of the music and your ability to interpret. Because again, the syntax, the natural way with every group is different. Some orchestras will play bang on the end of the beat, and for others it's somewhere there. And always, going in on day one and performing on such a potentially dangerous instrument, certainly you can't hide as a timpanist. It's always a challenge to know to work out the mechanisms that enable the performance to maintain its integrity. And so, having the experience of performing with so many different groups has been very enriching for me. Yeah, because I think the musical journey is one of searching. And to have been blessed with the opportunity to explore all of these different ensembles and such a wide variety of music has just made my world that much bigger, and that's been wonderful. A drawback for that, certainly, in terms of saving the planet. From the time I knew I was no longer going to be in the MPO, until the day I started working with Opera North, I traveled almost 250,000 air miles, which is not good for the planet. And I couldn't tell you how many bus journeys, train journeys, car journeys I took in that time. But I mean, it was very stressful, and very carbon expensive. So I'm sorry, world. But yeah, it was necessary for me. Very stressful time. Yeah, very stressful indeed. In fact, the most stressful years of my life, without exception. But richer for the experience in all sorts of ways I could not have anticipated.
Well, it's kind of, but aside from all the like how much that's taxed the world, it's good to hear that after all this time you found, like you said, your home at the RSNO. So yeah. Hopefully, I think once COVID has settled, I'm pretty sure that you might end up traveling across the world to perform alongside them as well. Anyways,
pretty sure, yes. In fact, we were, believe it or not, up until the 23rd of December, we were still in discussions with Fuji Toshiba in Japan about touring in February and March of this year.
Oh my.
But with the news of the new strain of COVID attacking the UK, it was mutually agreed that perhaps it was not the best time. But the discussions, the planning, everything was really quite advanced. So I'm sure we will be touring again soon. We're now on the short list for 2023.
Okay.
It'd be wonderful if that happens. But we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely, COVID should be settled by then, definitely. So yeah,
One hopes. Yes.
Yeah. Fair enough. So with that, I think we'll move on. So before we carry on with the interview, I would just like to remind our audience that if you have any questions for Paul, please leave your questions down in the Q&A section, or for our YouTube audience, please leave your questions in the live chat. So yeah, with that, we'll be moving on with our questions. So given that your profile explains that you had earned a position with the MPO as mentioned earlier on, when it was founded until you left in 2012, that would be close to 2 decades spent in Malaysia. Was there a particular reason for this, and would you like to elaborate on your experiences with the MPO?
The MPO, fantastic ensemble. I was very lucky to ascend to the principal timpani chair and be a founding member. Unforgettable experience. Unforgettable. Truly fantastic. Especially, I think, for me to work with Case Barkles, who is a genius. I think it's his birthday coming up. It is his birthday coming up very soon. Absolute genius. He has reimagined music that I thought I knew so well, and he will create something uniquely special and extraordinary. I owe him so much. So much of that which I am today is a direct result of my time working with him and the MPO. Yeah, things went well for a long time, and then they didn't. I'm still waiting for an explanation as to why I was told that my contract would not be renewed. The courts were not able to provide an answer. But they assured me that it was nothing to do with my abilities as a performer. That I was told on the record. But I wasn't told why. And neither were any of my colleagues, which I find strange. I've drawn my own conclusions, and those are based in the realms of politics. And well, yeah, I don't believe that if that situation had been replicated in the United Kingdom, I'm quite sure I'd either still be in my job or I'd be a very wealthy man. if you understand me. One or the other.
Yeah,
Wouldn't be like it is now. It wouldn't be like it is now. But as I said, I have been blessed in ways which I could not have predicted. And that outweighs the hurt that I continue to feel, and I think I will always feel, at the way that my situation and those of my colleagues, the MPO7, we were not treated well. And there's no reason for that. Ultimately, because of the way things were left, I had to leave Malaysia with what I could take in my hand baggage and check-in luggage. I lost all of my music library, all of my markings, my entire career, handwritten parts from my timpani professor. I've lost everything. When I started with Opera North in Leeds, we started from scratch. We bought cutlery, crockery, a table, chairs, fridge. We started from scratch because I lost everything, thanks to the way that I was treated by that orchestra. And as far as I'm concerned, it's impolite, hard to forgive. Hard to forgive.
But, well,
yeah.
Well, it's sad to hear that your time with the MPO met with such a what's the term, with such an unsatisfactory end. But yeah, well, it's, I suppose, like,
well, listen,
sorry.
I wouldn't say it's unsatisfactory. Acrimonious, certainly. Not from anything that I did. I was just unafraid to speak out on behalf of the orchestra in what I thought was the greater good, for what I thought was the greater good. I started off in Malaysia. I gave it my life. I gave it everything I had. I was, young, passionate, and the speech that we were given on day one by John Duffy, bless his heart, who is not very well at the moment, but send him best wishes. His speech on day one, and I quote almost verbatim, "We have the chance to get it right here." And I've held on to those words because that orchestra, like no other before it, as far as I was concerned, had the opportunity to really get it right. Should be much more famous, should be world famous, should have performed at the proms by now, should have toured the States, should have toured everywhere. It was an incredible ensemble with every possible resource behind it. And many an opportunity has been squandered by questionable decisions, in my opinion. But there is new leadership there, so the possibility for a new beginning, and I wish them all the best.
That's something that we can agree on. Well, but in a sense, like like what you mentioned earlier on, I suppose it is sort of like a blessing in disguise, because you did end up ending up with the RSNO at the end. So yeah. Do you still keep in contact with your other colleagues, like you mentioned earlier on, the MPO7, I think you referred to yourselves as?
Yes, in fact, I was in touch with Marcus Gunderman just yesterday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And even more broadly, I'm in touch with, because they're my friends, these people. Some of them very, very, very dear friends indeed. So of course, I'm still in touch. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys have spent about 14 years together, so that's definitely understandable then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, given that you have delved into both the role of a performer as well as an educator, what are your views on both these positions, and how have they actually complemented one another based on your own experiences?
Yes. I've always asserted that education is the ideal, the perfect counterbalance to performing, because as a performer you are there doing. As an educator, I've probably learned more about myself and my kind of modus operandi through education, through my education work, than I have actually just doing it. I think the educational side of things informs the performance side, and that cross reference, I think it makes for the perfect environment for fertile performance, fertile learning. Yeah, and I think it keeps you grounded in a way that's very important as well as a musician. There's John Chimes, my professor. Yes. Anyway, sorry. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely does. So, all right. So, but from what I understand, so basically, being an educator helps balance out the performance side of your, the performance side, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, that's definitely an interesting take on it. Thanks for sharing that with us. So, so I think we have about time for two more questions before we have to move on to the Q&A section. Yep. Yep. All right. So with that, we have a few more. We have two more questions for you. So as we have all experienced, the COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected industries across the world, with music being one of those drastically affected, as you may very well know. How do you think that musicians as a whole can strive to endure this, like as it's going on, as well as plan for the path forward? Because surely performances which involve traveling, like you mentioned, whether or not it's domestic or international, will not be easily considered even after everything has settled down, because crowds going to live concerts may not be met with as good a reception as they were before everything happened, before everything went down. So what are your views on this?
Musicians have always been very versatile. I'd say diversifying. I know musicians here, colleagues of mine in Scotland, more freelancing than others, but there's a guy who's delivering parcels for Amazon at the moment. Sadly, but the current situation necessitates that, because there's not much work on the ground at all. Again, I find myself in the extraordinarily fortunate position. I'm salaried. I've not lost a penny in terms of my earnings, and particularly because of the incidences surrounding George Floyd, the death of George Floyd last year, I found myself obtaining a lot of freelance work, sitting on panels, discussing issues surrounding Black Lives Matter and all of that kind of thing. So, I mean, even for me, I've been diversifying. My work with Scala Radio has meant, that's a completely new avenue. But as I said, musicians are creative, and as such, will survive. Of that, I have no doubt. The only significant issue is that of support and funding, centralized from government, which, again, there are varying degrees of all of this. I would love it if there was more centralized support, because again, it's so important. But musicians would always find a way. Will always find a way. Of that, I'm convinced. But in the short term, certainly diversify. Even what you're doing here, this medium through Zoom, it makes international collaboration so much more possible. There are lots of digital means. That's how the RSNO is earning its bread and butter today, with this digital season that we came up with at very short notice, and other orchestras follow. But certainly RSNO has been a pioneer in that. But I think also it's important to think of the long term, how you will use this new technology to enhance your performance model as a business model, actually, as an individual, as an entity. It's very important to think of creative ways. And I still have a feeling that there's a new technology that's not yet in the mainstream, not yet. It's probably in the back of someone's mind, waiting to transform the world. I think music education in particular. Zoom is fantastic, Microsoft Teams, all of these things are good, but there's the next step is not far away and will revolutionize many things.
I suppose in that sense, COVID-19 sort of has its upsides because it's sort of bolstering the progression of such technology. So yeah.
And well, beyond that, I think it's, the challenge it presents to the human spirit makes us so much more aware of the value of interpersonal relationships. As a performing artist, the value of audiences. My goodness, to perform to an empty room is, it's the hardest thing, really. So challenging because the energetic flow between you and the audience, it's absent. And so it becomes really hard work as opposed to just a joy. That's been really quite an alarming, humbling thing for me to experience.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose like other musicians other than yourself are also feeling this way as well. They can't wait to perform in front of a live audience again soon. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Yep. So I think we have about time for one last question. So this is a question from the JPO. So as you may have heard, the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra has involved itself in a variety of activities. So on behalf of the JPO, and based on your own experiences with outreach programs, both in Malaysia and with Systema Scotland, we would like to ask about your views on the JPO and its activities. Additionally, how would you suggest that the JPO and its members further improve itself?
I'm very grateful that the JPO is doing what it's doing. I think that, as again, I was mentioning before, the issue of centralized support, centralized funding, that being from government, and I suppose the private sector, sponsorship and so on and so forth, but primarily from central government. Throughout my life, all I've heard about is cuts, which is, in terms of funding. And this, it's tragic. It means that the music education that I was able to enjoy, certainly by the time I got to music college, my fees were paid for, and I was given an allowance, a financial subsidy to help me through my years as an undergraduate. And then they started introducing student loans. And now these student loans mean that you leave music college or, higher education with huge amounts of debt. Just no way to start your life. No way to start your life at all. At an even younger level, things like, orchestra ensembles, all of this kind of thing, which enriches life in ways which I think ultimately scientists would struggle to quantify, because there's most certainly an intellectual, emotional, spiritual element to all of that. And to cut it out of society is to hurt society, is to hurt the individual, is to hurt the collective, which I think explains very many of the societal behavioral problems that we see today. So to have people like Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra and all of the work that you're doing is wonderful. Actually, in retrospect, my advice to you would be do more, do as much as you can. Thank you for what you do. Do more, please, because the human spirit needs this. Simply, we need this. And to not have it is to take us one step closer to being barbarians. And that's the wrong way. This is just, we need to be creative, aspirational, grateful human beings.
All right. Well, thanks for all that, Paul. I'm very sure teacher Outling will take that to heart. And yeah, thanks for all the comments as well. So yeah, I think with that we have to move on to the Q&A section. So we do have a few questions coming in. Firstly, we have a greeting for you from Chia Cheng Kok. Maybe you
Hey,
might know him. Yeah.
hello.
Yep, so he's saying hello, Paul. Greetings from Malaysia. He even added a small.
Greetings from Glasgow.
Okay. All right. So yeah, with that we have a few questions coming in from various people. So we have one person saying, "Sir, what would you say the greatest difference between timpani and the rest of percussion instruments is in terms of technique?"
Technique. Um, That's an interesting question. Bearing in mind that I have not stepped foot on the other side of that that line, invisible line that exists between the timpani and the percussion section. I don't want this to sound. Well, it is a judgment, I suppose. That I think as a percussionist, your versatility, particularly in this modern age, with the way that film music is written for, the range of instruments that a percussionist has to deal with is extraordinary. From smashing glass plates, rubbing bits of polystyrene together, xylophone, snare drum, bass drum, cymbals. There's so many different things they have to encapsulate and to make sound fantastic. All the hand percussion, all of the ethnic instruments, some of which I've never heard of, don't even know how to play. I'm lucky in the sense that I have, sometimes as few as 2 timpani, sometimes as many as 6, maybe 7, around me. But I know what happens when I do that with that stick. I know what's going to happen. For them, they have to be masters of everything. I'm a master of one thing. So versatility is the big difference, I think.
All right. Well, I suppose that's true. But basically, instead of being a master of everything, it's sort of a jack of all trades because they can't truly be a master of everything, I suppose. Maybe
there are people out there who just blow me away with their mastery. Really, I'm no, for sure. Some extraordinarily talented individuals, especially on that side of the fence. Oh, on my side of the fence as well, for sure. But I in my bar's rest, I'll be looking over it, just admiring their ability, the multitasking. Gosh, my goodness.
the people like that in all corners of the world, I suppose, in every field.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. So we'll move on to the next question. The question from our next audience member. So they're saying, "Hello, I'm curious to find out. Do you need to own a set of timpani in order to learn a timpani or become a timpanist? And did you ever come across a timpani which are in very bad conditions during your performances?" Yeah. Okay.
Is it necessary to own any? No, I didn't for a long time. It certainly helps. The issue which comes up time and time again for many people that I know, and I experienced it myself, is access to instruments. If you don't have any yourself, access to instruments and access to a place where you can practice those instruments can be an enormous challenge. My advice to anyone who aspires to learn timpani and percussion is hoard as much gear as you can. because your relationship with those instruments will improve anyway, and that can only stand in good stead for you going forward as a performing musician. And as I say, if you have those instruments, then your access and ability to practice becomes so much easier. It means that your ability to prepare for auditions, performances, tricky stuff, etc., is that much more straightforward. So I'm very lucky in the sense that, at work, I have 2 rooms dedicated to my use. I have a timpani practice room, which doubles as a store. And I have a workshop. So for lapping timpani heads, calf and goat skin, and just general maintenance, and they're both just for me. So I'm very lucky for that. In terms of bad instruments that I've come across, yes, and that's another thing. You need to be prepared. If I'm traveling as a guest player, I will bring a certain number of tools with me, just in case. If I don't know what instruments I'm playing on, I'll bring every different type of key for to true up heads, adjustable spanner, kind of an adjustable pair of pliers, various things, which is just essential, just in case, because you'll turn up and there'll be a little, like a compass pinprick hole in the head. It's still playable. Maybe it doesn't sound true, so you'll spend time trying to balance it. Maybe there's something wrong with the mechanism. I bring a little bit of chapstick, a little stick of chapstick, not for my lips, but just in case there's something which is squeaking that you need a little bit of emergency lubrication for. It's a short-term solution. You have to solve problems on the fly. So that kind of thing is essential. And because, yes, I have, even, going into professional ensembles, sometimes you'll be astonished at how poor the gear can be. Not always the case, but it has happened once or twice.
Right. Well, that's definitely a very interesting insight there. But just to add on regarding hoarding equipment and such, have you ever met like a percussionist that's basically hoarded everything?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. There's a very good friend of mine who he offered me a great deal of work, particularly while I was at college. And that work in turn has offered me, 1, a chance to earn money, 2, and actually it's not in that order at all, experience of different ensembles, learning repertoire, performing in different venues, and also the chance to earn money. His name's Andrew Barnard. He used to work as a banker, and is now a consultant for that. But in his spare time, he plays timpani and percussion, and very well, I might add. And he owns, I forget how many sets of timpani. He owns all the gear. And as such, in better times, he gets booked to play. He gets booked to book timpani and percussion sections. Sometimes he'll be on one gig having fixed another gig somewhere else and supplied gear for both. And by the time you're doing that, you're earning quite a lot of money. You'll have your fee for playing and your fee for every single instrument that you provide for that concert. And if they're doing something like Carmina Burana, you've more than doubled your fee if you provide all the gear and play. Can't be bad.
Yeah, definitely. So the starting cost of actually getting everything probably is very well covered for since then.
Yeah. It's an investment in yourself and your own personal opportunities. But if the circumstances are right, and currently they are not, but this is a good time to do your foundational practice, get your chops in shape, get your head in shape, because when things start up again, there are going to be new opportunities coming. And when those opportunities come, and if you're able to provide gear, you're earning in. That investment will pay dividends for you at that time, for sure.
All right. Well, I'm sure the like the person that I was asking about about the previous question was definitely satisfying. I'm definitely very happy with your answer earlier on. So yeah, we're running a little short on time, but I think we have about time for one last question. So we have one last question from the audience. So what would you do differently if you had the chance to relearn or redo what you have been doing in your musical journey?
Hmm. I tell this to my students now. I think I've probably always told them something which I discovered quite early on in my time working with the MPO. I worked hard when I was at music college, but I remember a few months into the job, maybe regretting that I hadn't worked even harder. So I tell my students now, this is the time to work. Enjoy your life later. It's not to say, give yourself a little reward once a week, eat a bar of chocolate or something, treat yourself to something, but work like stink and then work some more. That's what I say for, people who are studying, beginning their journey with music, work like stink. And on a more personal level, if I could go back in time and speak to myself about one other thing, I'd have told myself to have bought my flat in 1998 when I first moved to Malaysia and not waited until 2011. That was very silly.
Yeah,
Yes.
timing, yeah, that would have been, yeah, unfortunate. Um, all right. Well, I think we should still have, because we do still have one last question from the. Oh wait. Oh, so this is actually a question directly from Yapling.
Hmm.
All right. So yeah, I think we do still have enough time before we have to close off. He's asking if there was anything that you'd like to share with us regarding the El Sistema program.
Hmm. Well, in a way, it's very similar to my understanding of some of what Jesselton Philharmonic are doing, in the sense that they offer free lessons for the poor and underprivileged. At the moment, there are 4 centres around Scotland, and they spend quite a lot of time identifying the best areas for them to create a centre. They spend a lot of time and care discussing that. So at the moment, we're in discussions about a couple more sites, which I cannot name. But once they are there, they work in collaboration with the schools, the parents. So they basically integrate themselves into the community, offering free music tuition. They act as an adjunct to the music curriculum in the schools which they're resident, and they're also after-school activities of various sizes, group activities that up to and including orchestral performances, rehearsals and performances. It's very much music is the vehicle, if you like, that they use to help to inspire life skills, invaluable life skills, and they start very young, very, very young indeed, all the way through that child's school life, acting as a support system, additional enrichment, if you like, through music. But it extends well beyond that and is personalized to that child's needs. And they're now starting to talk about what they do with their alumni, because that's starting to be a thing now, because the first site, I think, started 13 years ago. So some of the alumni are now working for Systema Scotland as a part of the project. And I'm sure that in itself will grow as the organization grows. And they are, as I say, talking about growth even through these COVID times. There's sponsorship and support at government level and everything going on. So, and again, I'm very grateful that they're doing what they're doing. I'm hugely inspired by it all. And because it changes lives, and we need this in our society. It's so important.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely very true there. Well, okay. I think Yapling wants to add a little bit more to the question as well. So has all this been integrated into the school syllabus? I'm assuming he means like like
Uh,
public schools and private schools. Like has
nationally,
sorry?
do you mean nationally?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No. Simply put, no. Um, music is not a part. It's not an essential part of the national curriculum anymore. It should be. While I was working with Opera North, they have a similar Systema-based system, which they call In Harmony. And there was a study shortly after I arrived, started working with Opera North. There was a study done because they had the data pre In Harmony and after a year of the program being integrated into the school system, and the results from the exams and performance, and not just in music but just in general, I think there were improvements of over 50% throughout the rest of the curriculum. You know, from a scientific point of view, that which you can quantify, the data strongly favors music education as being enriching not just to the creative side of things, but maths, science, communication skills, and confidence. You know, the social sciences, the social interaction, all of this kind of thing is enhanced by adding music to the curriculum. Why it's not done, I do not know,
Yeah,
but it
that's
should be.
yeah, that's actually quite disappointing here. That it's not being done where you are. So yeah, all right. Well, moving a little more onto the like regarding the locations where you guys set up, because you are not at liberty to say where you guys are planning to do so. Are you at liberty to explain how you guys how the organization goes about selecting such areas? Do these factors include like population density and such?
Yes, there are all sorts of studies done, a lot of collaborative discussions with the local council, the local authority, um, schools, and so on and so forth. As a board member, I'm presented with a lot of statistical data, and so all of that will be ranked and then juxtaposed against the kind of the emotional feel from people as who will have taken the tours, gotten to know individuals in the schools, and so on and so forth. Because numbers can't necessarily uh, accurately point to what's going to be the best possible fit, because the Systema product is, in a sense, in Scottish education, uh, quite unique. As I said, music is not an essential part of the national curriculum for anywhere in the UK, sadly. Um, So they look for areas where the the rest of the education is perhaps not on the strongest ground. That'll be uh, a part of the justification for attempting to raise the level, raise the overall level. But it's a collaborative thing. As I said, community based, so it's feet on the ground, but also coupled with a lot of statistics and a lot of discussion.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of work put behind selecting such areas. All right. Well, I'm sure Teacher Appling is happy to have more insight on how you and El Sistema organizes things there. So yeah, many thanks for that, Paul.
My pleasure.
I think with that I think we've already gone slightly over time. Yeah.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, it's definitely very eye-opening. It's very insightful hearing you talk about giving all your experiences and your views on all this. So yeah, thanks for sharing all this with us, Paul.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, sorry everyone, but we are coming to the end of tonight's broadcast. We'd just like to remind everyone that our JPO family program will be broadcasted twice a week until further notice. So that's every Sunday and Wednesday night in Malaysia. It's in the afternoon in your case. So join us next time with our next guest, who is Ian Scott, who is a clarinetist from the UK. More details on this can be found on our Facebook page. A video recording of tonight's broadcast will also be available on the YouTube channel, along with the past webinars and the soon-to-be broadcasted interviews. So feel free to share the Zoom webinar registration link, the JPO YouTube channel, and the JPO Facebook page with your friends and family. For our YouTube audience, if you are enjoying our program, please show your support by pressing the like and subscribe button down below. You guys have all been an amazing audience, and Paul, you have been an amazing guest. So yeah, we from the JPO wishes that everyone stays safe and healthy as we continue to face this crisis together. So I will now be leading a prayer to end tonight's program. So please pray in whatever faith you believe in regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. We pray that everyone in the world continues to stay strong in surviving through these difficult times, and that a solution to the virus will soon be found. We pray that the governments across the world continue to improve upon their efforts and decision-making so as to protect their people and curb the spread of the virus. We pray for the safety and well-being of everyone working as we move forward into this new year, and as parts of the world continue to face new surges of cases. We pray for the continued safety and morale of the frontliners who are risking their lives so that they may continue to provide for those in need. All right. So once again, thank you, Paul, for joining us, and thanks to the audience for watching. With that, good night, and we hope to see you all again next time.